Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. He's Gary Groob, and joining us today is the Rochester Knighthawks GM, Dan Carey. Dan, welcome to the program. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
We always ask, the first question is always, how did you pick up a stick?
I was, I think, 4 years old, and I grew up in the town of Peterborough, so pretty a lot of lacrosse and a lot of history there. So my dad brought a stick home. He didn't play much as a kid, but played a ton of hockey, and brought a stick home for me. Signed me up for the Peanuts in Peterborough, and from what I'm told, it didn't leave my hand for a while. And I think the next day I had school, and I was pretty upset when I wasn't able to bring it to school and bring it on the bus with me. So I was hooked right away, and great city to kind of grow up playing lacrosse in. And yes, from day one, I just fell in love with it with that first opportunity that I had to stick in my hands.
Like many of our guests, it didn't end at playing. You ended up working on the management side. But first, before I ask that question, what kept you in the game? What did you love about the game so much that the first thing that comes to mind that this is my game?
There's so many things, from a reflection point and looking back, one of the things that I cherish most is the relationships and just the opportunities to meet great people. And some of my best friends in the world are people that I met through the game of lacrosse. But just, I think, going through different stages at different ages, there's just so many things that we can go to and say, it's been a big part of our lives for many different reasons. I loved just, the skill set that you had a lacrosse stick in your hands, and you're able to cradle this ball and do some fun things with it. And again, Peterborough, there's so many people to teach you different things. There's like the skill level was incredible with the mentors and the people that we had to look up to. I just honestly growing up in Canada, and you're playing summer, it's in the box, and just the smell of the arena in the summer. And there's so many just cool qualities of playing that come to mind as a kid growing up playing the sport of lacrosse. So physical, fast, the camaraderie, the teammates, being in the locker room and just playing and competing in the summer, and knowing that, you're playing in 80, 90 degree weather, and the floor's, sweaty, and you're falling all over the place. And it was just a great experience.
You mentioned a little something there about the room. Whenever we talk to players, the biggest thing they miss if they don't continue the game is the room. The biggest thing the coaches talk about, getting back in that room. As a general manager, what's the connection for you? I heard it, I think, a little bit, getting involved with the personalities of players and stuff, but drill down on that.
Yeah, it's not the same, right? When you're a player, you're in there, you've got the bruises and the sweat and all that stuff to show, hey, I've worked hard for my teammates, and you've done your thing. It's a little bit different, right? In coaching, was able to coach in high school and junior A level in Peterborough, and still coach my kids at a different level. They're pretty young, but I think anytime you can be involved and be part of what that room is. And for me as a general manager, I'm not in the room as much, right? You're kind of in post game and stuff like that. But just being around the guys, whether it's physically in the room or not, I think just that mindset and knowing that these guys are putting their bodies on the line every single time they step on the floor, practice and games. So it's just, I still admire that, right? And know that, fortunately, I was able to go through that myself, but knowing that these guys are continuing to do that, it's there's a mutual respect and a respect that I have for these guys. So just being a part of the team still is kind of that connection to the locker room. They've got their time as players, but for us to be able to be with each other on the bus when you're on the road, and morning shoot arounds, and guys are eating breakfast and having dinner together. So I think just that team mindset. The room itself is important, but just kind of the atmosphere and the camaraderie to have a team, even outside the physical locker room, you still kind of have that mentality.
Last one for me. when you're looking at decisions, you make player decisions. What are a couple or one thing that sticks out for you that you see in either the documentation or in person with watching a player play?
When we're evaluating and looking to bring players into our organization, the number one thing for me is character. And, sometimes you can see that by, player playing on the field, on the floor, whatever it is. But word of mouth, right? And just trying to figure out who the right person is that we want to bring into our team and our culture. So that to me is the way I want to continue to run the Knighthawks organization, is finding the right people, making sure that they're going to be great teammates, accountable. You can trust them. They're going to put the work in. They have to have a skill level. They have to be good enough to play at this level. And, the better the player, having those attributes as far as being a good character and a good teammate, the better, right? We've got some really good skilled players on our team, and they're fantastic people. So it's not easy to do. There's going to be times where you have to, you have to kind of just manage certain people, certain personalities. But, for me, having the right people is very important, to lean on them and know that what our expectations are to compete at the highest level, they're going to be feeling the same way and doing what needs to get done to do what's best for the team.
Gary's going to drill down now. I give you advice and warning. Okay. Just kidding. Go ahead, Gary. Hit him with some history.
For sure. I want to talk about when you were first coming into to growing up in lacrosse and your biggest influences. Who would you say, especially in the Peterborough area?
So my dad would have to be one. My parents were great, and they were always so supportive and just loved the sport of lacrosse. And I think part of that grew with me continuing to play. My teammates were fantastic and just a good group of people, a lot of fun. I had some really good coaches over the years, and some names that, you'd probably be familiar with and some maybe not. But, Jim Johnson is a player and a coach. He played, I think, back in the 70s and 80s and part of, the kind of the senior A, senior B program at Peterborough. Just an amazing human, and a guy that at a very young age was very influential to me. And I think my dad as well, because my dad would help him coach, and a guy that wasn't, he wasn't necessarily, too experienced in the game, but he knew how to coach and be around kids. So Jim was great. The Evans family, Paul Evans was my coach for a few years. Jan McGee, late great Jan McGee. He actually played for the old Rochester team here, the Griffins, and he was a fantastic guy. There's just so many to kind of go through. Jim Wass, and I had John Martin and Dan Dunn as my junior A coaches. John Grant Sr. was always around. He would walk around the arena, and he would grab kids' sticks, and he would look at them and make sure that they're working properly. And he'd take a stick, give the kid another stick that worked, and take that kid's stick and start to fix it and restring it or whatever you need to do right there on the spot. So he would walk around with a string kit to make sure that, guys could throw properly, because you go home and you pull a stick off the shelf, and, there's going to be parents and kids and dads that don't really know how to string it and fix it. So just so many great influences. I'm missing a ton, but Bobby Allen's a guy that, I think there's a lot of history with a guy like that, and you hear his name. Remember when I was in senior and junior A, getting on the floor, he'd come out. Sometimes he'd be, a couple hours before the game, and he's just playing catch with you. So really cool to be around, such historic city when it comes to the history of lacrosse, but also just the people that were involved, and they just always wanted to get back to the sport and to the youth, and very lucky from that standpoint. That was in Peterborough. And again, not to drag this on any longer, but, college, I had Paul Wareham when I went to Herkimer, was just an amazing, amazing person and coach for me there. And then Randy Mearns at Canisius for a year. So been very fortunate over the years before I got to professional, and had a lot of great influences.
Right. It's funny because you talk about John Grant Sr. He still does that. at Lakers games now, I still see him taking kid sticks, and he's going to get it back to him in time for the game and whatever. To this day, he still does it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I don't like. He just wants to help, right? It's sometimes you're stringing a stick. It's not always fun if it's not yours, but for him to be able to do that, it just shows how much he cares about the sport.
Absolutely. The other thing that really, really, blows me away about Peterborough, even to this day, is how accessible all the legends are and open to talk about whether you want to hear about old stories or whether you want to hear about what's going on now, or even players coming up and asking for advice. It's still very, very much that culture in Peterborough still to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the alumni there really takes care of each other and cares for the team and the program. And, again, going to senior A and Jamie Batley and Bobby Keast and Jim Milligan and those guys, there's still that connection. And I think I first played junior or senior A in 2004, that first year. Been 20 years since Peterborough had won a Mann Cup. And that was the group. Jamie Batley was kind of leading that. And you just see the guys that were there in the 80s and had won those Mann Cups. They started to come around and really, you could see the sense of pride that they had within being a Laker. So it was really cool. And to this day, you're still, the crowds are still following that team, and I just love to see it.
It's the whole city. It shuts down on game day. It still shuts down, and you still get between 3,000 and 4,000 on a summer's night on a Thursday night for a Lakers game. It's incredible. And just the whole feeling in the city. I like going up there a few hours beforehand just to get the feel in there. And it's just amazing pregame, even postgame, watching everybody.
Yeah, no, when I was playing junior A from 99 to 2003, we could walk into the senior game and sit anywhere you wanted. And it just, we kind of caught fire there early 2000s, and it's been like that ever since. So I love to see it, and really glad and fortunate that was my hometown.
Right. Now, you mentioned going to Herkimer. That's an interesting route going in. What got you into Herkimer of all things?
So I didn't have a real strong desire to go play college lacrosse. I think part of it is I just didn't fully understand what that process looked like. And I was in high school and playing junior A, and didn't really have a plan as far as where I was going to college and what I wanted to do. And had some interest from some Division I schools, and I think they were coming to see other players that I was playing with or against, and had a couple of good schools offer me to come and either have a scholarship or go down to a camp, but had some pretty cool opportunities, and it just made me realize that that is something that I want to pursue. So as looking at what my options were, and my comfort level of playing the field game, which growing up at Peterborough, what they have now with all the different programs, club teams, we didn't have that. It was, playing high school field lacrosse was my first taste of playing outside, but it was just a bunch of, indoor box players playing in a field. It wasn't field lacrosse. So I knew I had a lot to learn and a lot to develop with. So I had a couple players that actually got traded to our junior A team. Luelis Mitchell was one of them. He went to Herkimer and started to talk about it, and it just kind of got the ball rolling for me. I talked to, as Mike Pressler was at Duke at the time, and he was recruiting me, and he actually said, "Hey, this would be a good opportunity and a good option for you to go kind of see what that looks like." And I'm really glad I took that opportunity and made that alliance, because again, Paul Wareham and Scott Barnard, the two coaches that were there, they kind of changed my mindset, and playing lacrosse every day. It was really good for me. So I had a fantastic time. We had a great team, and teammates were, some of the guys that I still, stay in contact with and are great friends. So I really cherish my time there, and I think it helped me develop as a lacrosse player.
Right. Did you find it difficult to go into a more blueprinted kind of idea in field, as opposed to all the years you did playing more by feel in box?
Yeah, I think it was, there's definitely a transition and a learning curve there. And, I think going into a program like that, and you had, basically a freshman and sophomore. So it wasn't, there was an adjustment, and again, junior college. So, kind of look at it how you like, and know that the caliber for all these teams wasn't great, but I think the top end teams it was really good lacrosse, and we were competing against Division 1, 2, and 3 programs in fall ball, and hanging right with them. So, Scott Ditzel's an example. He went on and played at Syracuse and started there and won a national championship. We had a lot of really good players that went through that program that I played with. So I think, there was a learning curve, and box, there's a lot of structure. You've got to really learn that game. And I think the amount of space that you have in field lacrosse, I felt like it was a decent transition. And, the athleticism was one thing that I needed to kind of improve on, and knowing that you're, going against guys that have been in the weight room a lot longer than I had been, definitely helped to try and take that part of it a little bit more serious, and just the athleticism part of it. But no, it was a learning curve, but halfway through that first year, I felt really, really comfortable out there.
Right. Now you change over into Canisius, and let's talk about playing for Mernsey. He's been a guest on the show as well, and man, what a fountain of knowledge, and just fun with the stories and everything else. But playing for him, talk about that.
What a just great human. And, I think for me, I had opportunities leaving Herkimer and some pretty significant schools that I had options to go to. I wanted to get closer to home, knowing that, for me to be farther away from my parents and travel for them, and knowing, just getting home on the occasional weekend, there was a value to me to have, a place that I was closer to home, and still not fully understanding the differences with some of the D1 programs. I made a choice, and there was a handful of Canadians there. So my recruiting trip and went there, was, stayed with Matt Vince and met a lot of the guys, and it just felt so comfortable, and knowing that Mernsey had played professional box, and that was going to be my goal. The connections that he had, and just, again, the comfort of being around other Canadians, being that close to the border. It was definitely appealing, and I cherished that choice. I know, again, I was there for 1 year, so didn't get through and get my degree from Canisius. I transferred to Trent University in Peterborough, but I met my wife there. So I think, to me, that was that's kind of the ultimate thing that I could have received from going to college was we've been married for, it'll be 16 years this summer. So, nice. My time with Mernsey was fantastic. And to this day, we're still friends. We get to work, we've worked together on Team Canada and been roommates. So it's kind of funny as a guy that coached me, and you see him on that side of it, but then you become friends and know that, that experience that I had as a player for him, somebody who was pretty immature and had a lot to learn in life, fast forward to 20 years later, and having a relationship with him and be able to still talk with him is awesome. So what a fantastic family the Merns are.
Absolutely. You get drafted in 2005, 7th overall. Talk to me about draft day and hearing your name.
So I don't really recall too much that the draft at that point. I think it was out in BC. There's probably a few that were in person, and it wasn't something that I was kind of asked to go to or expected to go to. I had a pretty good idea of where I might land, and if you look at that draft class, it's phenomenal. Like, it was, I think Brody was 1, Shawnee Evans was 2, Greenhall might have been 3. You kind of go down the list. Matt Vince, it was a pretty impressive draft class, and I didn't know exactly where it ended up. I think Matt Brown was 5 to Arizona. So I talked to Arizona and Colorado, and I wasn't sure if Arizona, they were looking for a lefty, had talked to me and said, hey, it's kind of between you and another couple teams. And then Steve Govett was the GM in Colorado, and he said, hey, if Matt Brown's there, we're taking him at 5. If not, we're taking you. Like, blunt, honest, straightforward. It was just like, this is what's happening. And I respected it. I don't think I'd ever met him at that point. And, so I got a call shortly after the draft and, was drafted to Colorado, which to me, being somebody who had played in Buffalo at Canisius and my wife was still in school there, you're thinking, hey, that could be a good fit, but getting a chance to play in Colorado in front of that crowd with that team and Gary Gate as my coach and Steve as the GM, I'm just, it really worked out and fortunate to get a win in that first season. And it was a great experience. It's one that, I couldn't have imagined at the time, didn't know anything about Denver, Colorado. I'd never been there. So it was, it's like, all right, going out to Colorado and then you actually see what it is. And couldn't have been luckier and been in a better spot.
Talk to me about your first training camp. One of my favorite questions to ask is, was it what you imagined? And it's an interesting answer from you because you're on both sides of it, being as a GM, seeing young kids come in now. But when you first got into your first training camp, was it what you envisioned?
I don't even know if I had a vision or had a thought process of what it was going to be. I know, knowing who I am and how I work, I probably asked a million questions to people and the guys that I played with in Peterborough, just like, hey, what can I expect? And I'm sure there's a bunch of nerves going into it. But I was a guy that took pride in being in shape and making sure I was prepared. So I think I actually don't even know if I was aware of what we would be going through outside of the amount of practices and scrimmages, probably a few days before. But going out there and you got the altitude and all that, I think we had a 3-day camp or a 4-day camp or something. And one of the first days we did the beep test and I'm a rookie. I got to prove myself and show what I can do. And probably a mistake to keep going as much as I could, but it was between me and Ben Prepchuk and we were at like 14 or something. And I couldn't go anymore. He kept going. He I don't know. I think he stayed even a little bit longer after I bowed out, but it was the two of us. And I could barely walk the next day. Like my hamstrings were so tight and, I'm this rookie trying to like prove myself. And I probably went a little bit too hard on that, but I remember how grueling it was. It was, I was completely exhausted by the end of it, but just getting around the guys and seeing, how G Nash and Gavin Proud and those guys operated on the floor, it was really cool. But we had just an awesome team. And I remember feeling comfortable right away and having played a few man cups leading up to that and had played at a high level against professionals. I felt confident in knowing that, I was an older player as a rookie and didn't feel like always nerves, but didn't feel like I couldn't do that. So prepared, great experience, but man, I remember how sore and how tired I was after that training camp.
Right. During that year, though, it was, you mentioned it was a magical team. This was a team that actually went right through. When did it really dawn on everybody that this is a team that could actually win the cup?
Probably the championship game. I think I don't remember the team thinking, hey, we're winning a championship this year. Right. And there maybe shouldn't share this, but years later talking to Steve Govin and I think there was a conversation that Bill Hall was the assistant GM and Gary and the coaching staff. It's like, this is going to be a tough year. Like I don't think they expected, again, Gary Gate retired the year before. They missed a couple guys had kind of moved on. And me and Chris Gill were our two lefties. And so Steve Wojtek and Gay Schindler, there's a handful of guys and they kept kind of going through. And so even offensively, we were just there was some pieces that they were still trying to figure out. Andrew Burkholder, we traded for him. I think he was in Rochester and his first game, he might've scored 4 goals or something. So I don't think it was like immediate, hey, this year we're going to win a championship, but they had success. They had a pretty good core, Brian Langtree, Gavin Prout, G Nash, Sims and Hanford and Jalbert. Like it was a really good Nick Carlson, great team. But I don't know if they had the expectations. And I think we were just a confident group. We really came together as far as professionally, like that was just a really close knit group. And we all had fun together. We all, the locker room was really tight. So again, the sport of lacrosse and the NLL, like you can win any night against anybody. And, I think there was definitely some challenges and some great teams, but you look at those first 2 games against Calgary and Arizona, they're both 1-goal games and really tight. So it could have went either way, but I think for us, as we started to get near the end of the season, we had confidence in ourselves and it worked out.
Carey, the familiarity that you have with others in lacrosse is a little different than other sports. So when putting together a team, I think to Gary's point about knowing what you're getting into, it's more prevalent in the game of lacrosse because everyone's so close and they know each other so well because of all the transition from teammate to opponent to teammate to opponent. How helpful is that when you step into a locker room, even if it's new?
Like you said, the world of lacrosse is small, right? It's like kind of one big family and everybody's connected one way or the other. And, I think summer lacrosse helps the NLL when it comes to that, because there's a chance you've played with 1 or 2 guys in the summer that are now playing for, again, at the point when I was playing, I think there was 9 or 10 teams, 13 and 9 or something like that, whatever it was. I know we grew and then came back. So I think it might have been 13 and then back to 9. But anyway, I think it's just there's so many different opportunities to have those connections. And if it wasn't, I don't think I actually had any of my Peterborough teammates in Denver, but they all knew those guys. So it was, kind of, hey, like, here's your guy to go to sort of thing. And there's connections. So it was, sometimes it's nice to go to a team that you don't know anybody, because it forces you to kind of, make new, kind of close teammates and go through that process instead of sticking with the guy that you're comfortable with. But yeah, it's such a small community, right? Everybody seems to know each other. And I think that's, it's one of the kind of cool things about the NLL is you have that opportunity to have a connection and know that before you even meet somebody, there's a good chance that you have that kind of mutual connection.
And everybody gets a good insight on the game because they play with different people all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
It's actually successful somewhere else.
Oh, you're learning a ton from different players. And again, definitely fortunate that you get the group of Peterborough with John Grant and Tracy Koleski and Matt Giles and these guys, Scotty Evans grew up with. And then you go Gavin Prout and you're coached by Gary Gade and Dan Stroop and Chris Gill. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just as much information as little tricks of the trade that you can take. But, playing together is one thing, but also you're on the floor against other players. That's, as an athlete, you got to be stealing and taking things from them as well, right? We went up against Josh Sanderson and Colin Doyle so many times. You're like, can I take something from them because of how successful they were?
And it's also, it runs right through lacrosse completely from one end to the other, because there aren't many sports that have a different field to play on. The field of play doesn't change, right? If you play basketball in college, you're playing on the same surface you're playing in pro. But lacrosse has this other variable, field lacrosse versus, box lacrosse. And now this sixes thing is really creating a variety of opportunity for people to appreciate the game in different ways.
Absolutely. And again, it's hard to, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? I think the more lacrosse you can play, it's great. But now it's like, all right, well, there's some confusion and what's better. And, that's a story for another day, but trying to make sure everything is supporting each other. But I just want to see the game of lacrosse continue to grow and have kids grab a stick like I did at a young age and, try and make lifelong memories and friends. And there's so many things that this game can give us. And again, working for the Seneca Nation, like, this is the creator's game and it's a medicine game. There's a lot of, things that we can look to with the game of lacrosse. So how do you find that? How do you make the most of it? And, I think for me, just being somebody who can help a little bit with that for anybody who's looking to play, I want to be able to give back.
And I don't want to leave the sixes out there like I'm saying it's some sort of handicap or some sort of bad thing. I think there is sacrifice in sports sometimes that has to be made. And in the case of lacrosse, as many eyes as they can get on it, if playing sixes at the Olympics means more people watch the game, I think all of us are on the same page as far as that being a good idea, bottom line wise.
Yeah, it's huge. If I understand the why, right? To be able to get any type of discipline of lacrosse into the world stage is very important. And the Olympics is, you don't get any bigger than that when it comes to competition. So, I think those who are involved in those decisions, I'm all for it and on board to help grow this game of lacrosse. And if we see some kids in another country that might not have been exposed to it and they pick the sport up and it grows, then, to me, whatever the discipline is, I'm good with. Again, you got Olympic Village, you got, a larger roster. It's a little bit harder to get that approved if you have 20 to 24, person roster to try and have them accommodated in Olympic Village. So I think it makes sense to have a shorter roster and a different discipline. If that's what it takes, then let's do it.
We're watching the Olympics right now. We're seeing the excitement generated not just by the game, but the atmosphere around the game. Like when we watch the hockey, Canada against whomever, or the U.S. against whomever, or skiers or sports that really don't get a lot of attention. They're getting attention and getting eyes and getting opportunities. And we're really grateful. I as a lacrosse fan, am grateful that they're going to be at the Olympics.
Yeah, me too.
Now let's transition. We're due to injury. You have to leave playing. When would you say was enough? When you came to Toronto 2012 and it's like another concussion, it's enough.
Yeah. So I played 2 full seasons in 2006, 2007, the NLL, and then 2008, I think it was game 10, maybe, or my 11th game, maybe. I had a concussion and at the time wasn't educated, didn't really know. And, medical staff was great in Colorado, but, my thing is like, yeah, I feel pretty good, but I knew there was something off, but I didn't know enough to say, hey, this is what it is. Like, do you have a headache? Was kind of the common question for people who had a concussion. So I had a concussion. We had a bye week, played 2 weeks later at home against Rochester, and came in. I took a little hit in the first quarter and came into the locker room. So I wasn't, at that point, I knew I hadn't been completely healed because, I'd taken so many hits to the head and never really affected me. But from the previous game to that game, just felt off the rest of the half and continued to play because I didn't know well enough. And then came into the locker room and just like, I couldn't function. So it was bad for about 2 months there. And then, kind of came back and just kind of fought through it and tried to figure out ways. And I think there's a lot that, kind of snowballed, and I just never got back to the same. So I kept trying to fight through it. And there's a few years where I only played 4 games. And then I think my last year in Colorado, I was about to retire and saw, and his name is Andy Plater. He was a trainer for the Leafs, and he had some time to help me out. And I immediately changed my life with some of the treatments that he had on me. And then decided, I think it was October, I decided to play that year. I was ready to retire. So that was my, I think, I don't know, second last or last year in Colorado. And just kind of kept trying to fight through it because I love the sport, and nobody was telling me, hey, this is not good for you. But I think just over a number of concussions, I think 2 or 3, kept trying to fight through it. And then my last year in Toronto, the last game that I played was against Buffalo, and another concussion. Unfortunately, the doctors didn't feel like it was fit to continue to play, and probably the right decision, to be honest. I came back the next year trying and hoping, and showed up at training camp, but it wasn't in the cards for me. So it sucked. It was not for somebody who still loved the sport and felt like I hadn't even hit my stride or my peak yet as a player. But that's part of it. You sign up for a contact sport, and I was always tiny as a kid, and I would there's so many times that I'd carry my helmet off to the bench, but never felt like I don't think I ever dealt with that. And it was actually my fault. The first one, I tried to hit the guy that was about 6'6" with my head and didn't work out for me. So after that, I just, kind of an uphill battle the whole time. And,
Right.
Again, I cherish the time that I got to play and don't have any regrets, but it just couldn't get back to, the player I wanted to be. And I know even for my, like, personality wise, I know I wasn't myself. So being around some coaches and teammates, I'm sure, didn't leave the full impression of who I am, but part of the sport. A lot of people deal with it and had to move on and wanted to continue to stay involved in the sport.
Let's talk about transitioning into management. And you get a job with Colorado in player personnel, and then that turns into becoming the GM. Let's talk about the transition into becoming the GM.
So I was back in Peterborough. I just got married 2010, retired in 12, and then with Colorado again, Steve Govett, just had a great relationship with him. And I was coaching junior A during the time where I was, kind of dealing with the concussions, and started scouting for them and just kind of volunteer scouting and wanted to get involved, and always thought that was just a cool job. Never felt like, hey, that's something I'm going to try to do as a younger guy, but I started to kind of take a liking to it, and I did a decent job apparently with some of the scouting and helping with that.
Right.
So I worked at the Hill Academy for a couple of years, coaching and teaching there. And then Steve called me in 2015 in the summer and said, hey, he was looking to move on at some point. Nothing guaranteed, but if I was interested, he was looking to bring somebody in to kind of groom and to help him with some of the things on the personnel side. So I was hired as director of player personnel. He made an offer. My wife was really supportive of it. We had a 1-year-old daughter. We decided to sell our house in Peterborough and move out to Denver, Colorado. And again, wasn't guaranteed anything, didn't know how it would work out, but I think it was about 2 years, less than 2 years, I think. And then I took over as general manager when he went out to San Diego. So
right.
Great. For me, it was just trying to make the most of an opportunity and, kind of betting on myself, and it worked out for now, at least, right? You never know. And again, like if it stopped today, I still feel like everything that all the experiences and everything that I've done through this process have been just great life experiences. And I've learned a ton and had, from my standpoint, at least, just build some really good relationships to stay involved in the sport. So,
right.
And be confident what you're capable of.
What's that?
Oh, and be confident of what you're capable of.
Yeah, you have to be in this role, right? You have to be confident and know that if you're not, then you're going to make mistakes. We make mistakes regardless, but you're going to make a lot more mistakes if you're not confident in it.
But that's the challenge. That's what makes you want to do it, isn't it? Like being on that edge of every move is the last best move that you can make.
Yeah, and it's being somebody who just loves to compete, right? And whether you're playing yard games with your buddies or playing hockey on Thursday nights, like I just love to compete, and this is a way to compete. Sometimes it would be nice to shut it off. I feel sometimes it's just like you're always in competitive mode. So when your job is part of that, and wins and losses are real, and they're a part of what you do, and it's a results driven business, it's tiring sometimes, but
right.
That's who I am. I'm just wired that way. I love to compete and be part of a team. To be able to have an end goal is something that you have to be every day, kind of looking to see what, good or bad, how you can improve and what you can do to make your team better.
That's the part I was trying to drill down on, where there's any moment and any time where you turn on as a GM. As a player, you can shut down for a little while and ignore the world. But as a GM, you can't let go of any opportunity that might pass by. And you're constantly, that's got to be a lot of pressure. And I know it's rewarding, but it must be a lot of pressure to always be ready to make a move.
Yeah, and again, I've kind of learned and been taught like sometimes the best move you make is not making a move.
There you go.
And there's a lot of things that you have to consider, but you got to make this tough decision sometimes, whether that's not making a move and making a decision is still making a decision, or you got to make a decision to make a move, and sometimes that's disrupting the team, and what you think might be best isn't necessarily best, and we have to kind of live with those, and part of it is learning through that. And I'm not perfect. We've made a lot of great trades, and we've made some that maybe not aren't seen as great, but trying to learn from them and get better, and know that the information that you have, you got to be willing to make the decision based on that, and gaining as much information and thinking things through. Sometimes you have to just go with your gut, but most times you got to really make sure you're educating yourself before you make the decisions.
I guess that's one of the similarities between being a player and a coach. Just like in practice, you practice moves you may never use. And in the case of a general manager, general manager, you got to think of every move and make a decision on each move, because you really don't know what's going to be necessary going down the road as a GM, just as a player.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I really enjoy this conversation about being a GM. Thank you.
It's good. Here.
Gary, did you freeze?
Gary looks like he's frozen.
Oh, geez. I thought I shut him up. That would have been. No, I just got rid of him, I guess.
Yeah, no. He's like, I'm not listening to this Dan Carey guy ramble anymore.
That's me, not you. You're fine. You're fantastic. We're really grateful that you're here. Rochester, the team itself is a team that, I like to call it the triumvirate of lacrosse teams. Toronto, Buffalo, and of course Rochester. That triangle that's very close. It's a luxury that you three teams have that not many other lacrosse teams in the NLL. In fact, no, I don't think any other NLL team outside of that triangle has the benefit of being so close to each other and always aware of what each other are doing. Or am I assuming too much?
No, I think that's historically right. Those proximity wise, those three teams have been always close, and some of the longest standing teams in the NLL. You can add Oshawa and Ottawa there now too, with kind of based in Ontario.
Absolutely.
But it's there's a lot of history in Buffalo and Rochester and in Toronto when it comes to championships and success that they've had. So we're a new organization now from 2019, but we still want to be part of that and start to build our own successes here. And it's the proximity helps when it comes to rivalries, but there's so many teams in this league that you got to be ready for and compete against, and you're going to build those rivalries sometimes naturally and organically through different things. And Buffalo, Toronto are always tough opponents. Since I've been in this league, they're both two teams that have been historically at the top of the standings and never an easy game. So definitely cool to be part of the three that are close in proximity and when it comes to history, but there's a lot of teams to include in there as well.
That was a question on behalf of Gary while Gary was gone. Gary, I asked him about the benefit of being part of the historical triangle of Rochester, right, Buffalo, and Toronto, because you see, Gary likes going to lacrosse, and they're the three easiest places. And now Oshawa, obviously, or Peterborough, Oshawa. For me, it's the same thing. Whether you go to Peterborough or Oshawa, you're going to see the same fans. So now you got four locations very close to each other that are actually drivable. And I was asking the GM how much he enjoys that, being in the proximity of all these other great teams. And that you heard his answer at the end there.
Right. I actually want to drive down a bit more on the idea of getting an expansion franchise, and basically it's a slab of clay. And of course there were growing pains in the beginning years, but from taking it from where you started there to where we are now, you've made some incredible moves. You've had some bold decisions along the way. Take us through the journey on how you came from from the days of, you had Craig Wendy, you had Steve Fryer as goalies, to where we are now with Riley Hutchcraft and Rylan Hartley and all the different moves along the way, getting Connor Fields, Ryan Smith, and between the draft and moves just to get us to where we are now.
It's been a process, and honestly, I'm not a very patient man, but I've had to learn that through this. And from day one, really tried to focus on the quality over quantity. And I mean, like making sure we have the right players, and building through the draft is something that, you looked at the teams that were successful at that time. Saskatchewan had their run, and Derek Keenan did, such a fantastic general manager and coach. And you look at their team and their roster, and those players were all, top end first round players. Georgia had always, kind of stocked up on high draft picks. So, there was a bit of a blueprint that I was kind of looking at, and knowing that those first round picks are really valuable. And if we were to move one of those picks or use one of those picks for a player that's already established, I wanted to make sure we had time with that player, and it wasn't going to be, a couple of years, or focus too much on, the high end free agents that are going to now take away from either acquiring a higher round pick or taking the reps away from those players. So, again, we started off with an expansion draft and didn't have, we weren't as deep as we would have liked early on. Right. And you mentioned a few goalies, and we've went through a lot. And, the National Lacrosse League, the most important position, I believe, is goaltending. And, it wasn't for a lack of trying. There was a bunch of free agents that we've talked to over the years. And, again, we have Rylan Hartley and Riley Hutchcraft as our goalies now. And again, Hartley has had some difficulties when it comes to injuries, but I really think everybody can agree that he's shown glimpses of being a top tier goalie in our league, and capable of not just winning a bunch of games, but stealing some games every now and then. Hutchie had a great year last year. He, coming to us, he had never really started a game and played some minutes in Toronto, but watching him play in the summer, felt like he was ready for more of an opportunity, and needed to have somebody with Ryland's injuries and what he had dealt with over the years, making sure we had somebody that could step in if something were to not go great, as well as push him to be better, right? We wanted to have two guys come in and compete for that job. So, we love those two. They're great teammates. So the goaltending situation has evolved, and there was one year, I think we went through 5 goalies with injuries. It was not ideal, but trying to make the best of that opportunity and that position has been a challenge. But I think those two guys, again, you look at Hutchie's numbers from last year, he's capable, and I know this year he's had some opportunities that I'm sure he's ready for the next one with how things have gone. And anytime the goaltenders, if there is a bit of a struggle or a time where they're not at their best, it's not just on them, right? Our defense, the best defense in front of a goalie is definitely going to help them in their percentages and all the stats. So, goaltending has been one of those things. We've had a lot of change over the years, but we've had some consistency now with these two over the last few. Again, you can talk about our roster with Ryan Smith and Rylan Reese and Connor Fields and these guys, Ryan Lanchbury as our Thomas McConvey first overall pick. So we feel like we've done a good job with those picks that we've had, and made the most of building a roster that we have some time ahead of us with those guys, right? There's a future that Connor Fields has got 4 years, I think, left in his contract, and loves being a Nighthawk, loves being here with this team. And, you talk about those other guys, they're still kind of scratching the surface from my opinion. I think there's still a lot of growth, and you're seeing guys around this league at 37, 38, 39 offensively that are still putting up great numbers. Majority of our guys haven't even hit 30 yet offensively. So, I think the future's bright with our group, but the future is always, the future, and we have to focus on now. So I think, we're happy with where we're at with our with our guys. And, you talk about our offense, defense, goaltending, we feel like we're ready to compete every night.
Right. One of the things also, what I've noticed of the team is the camaraderie. Everybody plays for everybody. Nobody is bigger than the team itself. Everybody is in with everybody. And the guys you brought in, the McCulleys, guys like that, are team guys, character guys, whereas you've gone for character, not characters in the dressing room.
Yeah, again, going back to the culture and how important it is to have good people. They care about each other, and I think part of that is just, when you come into our locker room, you see what it's like, and that is a reflection of the guys that we have in the locker room. So I don't really need to say much when we bring a new guy in. It's up to that person and our current players for them to feel and understand what it means to be a Nighthawk and be supportive and be a great teammate. So, the checkpoints and that list we have to check off of qualities of a player and a teammate. I'm always asking, is he a good guy? I'm asking some of our players if we're looking to bring a guy in, what is he like as a teammate? Right. And that's important. And, nobody's perfect. Everybody's got their qualities about them that we can all improve and be better. But, I think the main part for me is just making sure that it's just the right people and, like you said, the camaraderie and for us, lately we've had to stick up for ourselves and be there for each other. It's a part of it. Right. And whether it's, just being there to pat your teammate on the back or have to step up, in certain moments physically, if you have to, or whatever it is, that these guys care about each other. And I think it shows out on the floor and in the locker room.
And also, when you reach down, having O'Toole and having Hazer there, that's a big thing too, because between the experience of them playing and the experience of them coaching, I think that's a huge thing, especially with a younger team, to get everybody on the same page and over the bumps in the road along the way to have everybody stay focused.
Yeah, when you have guys like that have been around for as long as they have been as players and coaches, it's there's not a lot that they haven't seen. So for them to be able to kind of instill that confidence and know that, hey, we've been through this. We need to, figure out a way for the team to be, coming together or being confident, whatever it is. They've seen it all. They've been through it, and it's not an easy thing at any point, but to have the experience, it makes it a little bit easier. And sometimes they have the answers that other younger guys might not.
Gary freeze again? I think he did. Gary has this problem where he is with Rogers. It shuts on and off for him. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah. I haven't paid my thing for Skydome yet for second base yet, so they keep reminding me. I'm sorry. Let's look a bit at this here. You guys started out like a house on fire and really, really put the pedal to the metal. We've had a few little bumps in the roads and some distractions and some nonsense and stuff like that. We're going into this weekend and really a turnaround week. Let's talk about, we're coming into trade deadline time. And obviously, if you were anything, you'd be a buyer. Where do you think, is there anything that you would be interested in bolstering, or with everything that you got, would you be more of a stamp pat kind of guy?
Like we talked about earlier, right? Some of the decisions you make, you got to go through and make sure you have the proper information. And the challenging thing about this job is you care about these guys personally, individually, right? It's not like, okay, I care about the team immensely, but each individual guy, again, some guys I don't see and don't talk to as much because I don't need to. They're good. They do their thing. Some of the younger guys, again, that relationship hasn't built up as much as some of these other guys that have been with us since day one, right? And even some guys before that. So it's never easy because it affects the team, right? So making those decisions, you have to make sure that you're thinking through, what is this going to do to our culture? But it's professional, and people have to understand, I have to make decisions. Again, it's not a unilateral decision. In most cases, I'm talking and consulting with our coaches, but I'm ultimately that one that has to make that final decision. And do what I think is best for the team. So if it means that we have to move on from a couple of players because it's best for the greater good and the whole group, then I'm willing to do that. And that's part of my job. And it's not an easy part, but we've had to move on from guys, we had to release guys and just, move on from guys in free agency and trade guys. It's never easy. And it doesn't mean that they don't mean a lot to us, but it just, again, whether my decisions are right or wrong, we have to make those decisions. So I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to make this team better, while also being cognizant of our future. And I can't do anything that's going to hurt us in the long term. But if there's an opportunity to make us better and help us get to a point where we feel even more confident in ourselves, because, again, this is a tough league to win in any night of the week. And, we're going to focus on the next game. We feel really confident that we can beat anybody any night, but same goes for them, right? They're feeling the same way. So definitely interested and willing to see what's out there and what's available for us to become a better team. But, have to see what's out there first.
Absolutely. Let's move a little bit of State of the Union. Now, with the Olympics coming up in a couple of years, is this the big send-off that's going to take the league from floor 3 or 4 up into penthouse, do you think?
I would love that to happen. I know our commissioner, Brett Frude, he's been, doing great things for us. And I know there's been a lot of things that he's had to deal with that aren't ideal, right? Rochester being one of them. And the amount of time that the two of us spent together is like, I felt bad for him, right? Like he couldn't do what he was hired to do because he's trying to save certain franchises. And the year before that, it was Panther City. And it's just, it hasn't been an ideal situation for him. But believe in him, and I believe in our product. And, the more exposure and eyeballs that we have on the National Lacrosse League, I think that it's going to just grow our game. And that might be through the Olympics and knowing that, hey, this is the sport. These guys, hopefully we can find a way to highlight the players that are going to be playing, because, I can pretty much guarantee every player on that Team Canada is going to be a National Lacrosse League player, right? They're going to be guys that play in the NLL and for Team Canada, and I'm sure a lot of the other countries as well. So that is a great opportunity for us to grow the sport, and hopefully the National Lacrosse League can take advantage of that.
Now, do you think I'm hoping that the league has an exit strategy? Otherwise, it's, that was wonderful, and then we go back to where we were. So the biggest thing is to have an exit strategy of where to grow and where to go after the Olympics.
Yeah, I know they're working on a lot of different things, and you see different initiatives coming from the league that's trying to grow that and trying to grow our footprint across North America. So yeah, that's, media rights deal is a big part of that. So I think, again, not being too much into the weeds here, they're every day that's their goal they're working on. And I know when it comes to that opportunity to take advantage of that, we got to be ready, and I'm sure they will be.
Right. I want to drill on one small thing before we end. And you played in All-Star games when you were a player. Do you think that the league is missing out, now that it's got TSN and ESPN at the ready, on an All-Star game showing skills and showing the best players in the world in one event?
Possibly. I think doing it the right way is most important. So how does that work? Who has the ability and the bandwidth to put that on, right? Like the creativity, the athleticism, and everything that comes in like a National Lacrosse League game. I think that's one area that we can improve on, is trying to find a way to present that in the best possible way. Like, you see some of these goals that are scored and you see the goalie moving one way or the other, and it's like, what is he doing? But it's, the shooter is so like the creativity and the deception that you're getting for some of these guys, that you're making a goalie move one way and you're putting the ball the other way. Like and they're pinging corners that, you're seeing those little triangles in the mesh in the net, and and they're hitting those. They're trying to hit them and they're hitting them. So you look at how big our goalies are. But again, some of the saves that are made with the athleticism and some of the defensive plays and the hits, it's just, so I think trying to highlight that in a way that might not be consistent with our current broadcast, and how do you expose that? How do you find a way to like bring out these finer details? I think would be a pretty cool opportunity to try and find that additional exposure in an all-star game. So, I'm not opposed to it. It was definitely like, some highlights of my career was playing with the best players in an all-star setting. Was really cool experience for me. It'd be nice to see it again for sure, but somebody's got to host it. Somebody's got to put it on. There's a lot that goes through it. And I don't know in the past if the juice has been worth the squeeze sort of thing. And those, so have it just to have it. But if we do have it, I think we have to make sure we make the most of it.
Just one last thing is you mentioned, the problem with ownership in Rochester, and that Seneca Nation came and saved the franchise. Talk about the relationship with Seneca Nation and the franchise itself. And, everything I've seen has been top notch. I think they've just been fantastic since they've come in. From your perspective and where you are, talk about how much life has been breathed into the franchise.
Yeah, what a fantastic situation for us to be in. Like, I don't think it could have worked out any better. To have an ownership group that is like just super invested and they care. They're texting us good luck, and they're wanting to meet our players and go through, like, it's just, they care. And the president's been at every game. He purchased a suite for himself, and he's at every game, and the counselors, the whole, like, they're just invested. They care. They're there. They're present. They're Knighthawks fans. So it's really cool to see. And again, we're going to have a level of accountability from them to do what is best. And they want to win. They want a winning team and the winning culture. And, we want to do that for them. We want to, for myself, for the players, the coaches, it's for a lot of people, but now there's another added incentive to do it for them as well. So I'm excited. I wish it was in June when they could have bought the team and gave us a little bit more, but hey, it's worked out really well. We have a lot to improve on when it comes to, putting butts in seats and putting on an improved product. I think we've done a good job, but given the timing, and it was kind of like, hey, we're running before we could crawl sort of thing. And just, we had to move as quickly as we possibly could. So there was a lot to be done in a really short time. And I think we've done a good job with it, but, again, not wishing for an off season too soon, but when we do have some time to actually take a breath, we'll be able to really focus on the areas that, might need more improvement than others. And it's just, mindset is to continue to get better and improved in all areas, not just, on the field is one thing, but in the arena is the other.
Absolutely. Listen, Dan, I know how busy you are, and I know with the games coming up this weekend, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about your career and about the Knighthawks, past, present, and future. So wish you all the success in the world. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. No, thank you both. And anytime I get to talk lacrosse, it's, not part of the job. It's nice and an easy thing to talk about. So I appreciate the time.
Well, I personally love digging in on the GM's job. We don't get much opportunity to do that, and you've been pretty forthright in letting us know your exact feelings. So thanks for that little bit of education, that opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, he's Gary Groob. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci, and he's Dan Gary, GM of the Rochester Knighthawks. Good luck in the rest of the season, my friend.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next week, Thursdays at 4, NLL Lacrosse Talk.